If a competition to replace our aging fighter fleet were to be held, what would Canada's options be? The Boeing Super Hornet is the latest successor to the CF-18 Hornets, currently in Canadian service. The plane's similarities to its predecessor offers ease of pilot training and maintenance, placing it at the top of the list. And there is the Eurofighter Typhoon. It's pricey at $158 million a copy, but this operational aircraft is in service with 4 NATO countries as their primary air-to-air interceptor. Also in the running would be Sweden's next-generation Saab Gripen. The multi-role fighter is designed specifically to meet all of NATO's interoperability requirements. While the Saab Gripen would undoubtedly be a long shot in any Canadian-held competition, the frontrunner in such a scenario remains the Boeing Super Hornet. To find out what this aircraft could offer the Canadian Air Force, we ventured to the gateway to the West, St. Louis, Missouri. In this blue-collar, economically depressed Midwestern city, Boeing has an enormous presence.
We're here at the headquarters of Boeing Defense, Space and Security in St. Louis, Missouri, the single largest employer in the region with some 13,000 workers, many of whom are engaged in the production of the F-18 Super Hornet.
We met with the Super Hornet's chief test pilot, Ricardo Traven, who offered us a brief tour of the company's corporate museum hall. Before coming to Boeing, Traven spent 18 years as a fighter pilot in the Canadian Air Force. Much of that time was spent up north.
It gives one a lot of confidence when you're deploying up into the north and the weather predictions up there and the weather forecasts up there are not necessarily really the good. And it's hours later. Remember, if you hit a tanker, it could be many hours later before you come back to base. And you don't know what you're going to get when you land. And now you have an airplane you have a lot of confidence in being able to handle the situations on the ground that you're going to have to handle as a pilot. The Super Hornet is, multi-role, multi-mission airplane. It employs a lot of very stealth design characteristics that I don't think a lot of people know about, and that it's not commonly understood because it's not necessarily termed a stealth plane. Internally, the avionics systems and how they work are a generation ahead. The radar is certainly a generation or even more ahead of what is in the current F-18s that Canada flies. The cockpit is a generation ahead. And so, it's called a Super Hornet because of its lines, but not because it's just a new and improved Hornet. It is a new airplane.
Because of the design similarities, Traven says acquiring the Super Hornet would afford Canada an almost seamless transition to the next generation of fighter aircraft.
It's very, very easy to transition from the Hornet to the Super Hornet because so much of the design philosophy remain the same. So the way the cockpit's laid out, the way the switch is laid out, the way you start it and shut it down, it's all very, very similar. And so, very simple, easy to fly. The other, I think, advantage that the Super Hornet brings is that it's made right now to be completely compatible with the current Hornet in terms of exchanging information between the airplanes through data links. So if a Super Hornet were to show up in Canada, the day one that airplane would show up in Canada, Canada would automatically have almost like a midlife update to its current Hornet fleet, because immediately it would begin working with the other Hornets and linking with them and sending them information through the link system from the ESA radar, for example, and making all airplanes suddenly more capable.
Boeing's program manager, Mike Gibbons, explained that because Boeing is both a producer of military and commercial aircraft, it can offer a dollar-for-dollar offset package, which would specifically benefit Canadian aerospace industry.
That dollar-for-dollar means that the Canadian companies would receive work that would be offset by something that Boeing is doing, and that something is not limited to the F-18 program. It could be a commercial aircraft like 787, 777, could be quite a bit of choices there, something from our space division, something from communications. We have a lot to offer.
Boeing's industrial benefits program is one potential reason for considering the Super Hornet in an open competitive bidding process. Another is the cost.
Well, right now we're under contract to the United States Navy for what's called multi-year 3, and our unit average cost that we guarantee to them is, when you add in some government furnished equipment like engines, is a little over $52 million. So obviously a very good value for the kind of capabilities they get.
What is the Liberal Party's position on where we're at now? I mean, what position would they take?
We would cancel that sole source process. We would not proceed with the acquisition as announced by the Conservatives last summer. We would hold an open public competition after making public the statement of requirements.
The Liberal Party's plan to scrap the deal and hold an open competition to replace the CF-18 has been met with a full-scale counteroffensive by the Harper government.
What are the Liberals and their friends in the NDP and the Bloc Québécois seriously suggesting? That after developing one aircraft, we'll go out and buy a second aircraft, so we'll have two aircrafts we're paying for instead of one? Are they suggesting we just won't buy an aircraft? We are buying it in a way that gets the best deal for Canada. We've been doing it with a process the previous government itself agreed to. Their position here is playing politics with the lives of our men and women in uniform, with the jobs of the people in this room, and we will not stand for it. And I'll tell you, the industry across this country isn't going to stand for this kind of behavior.
Because we disagree with the expenditure of this vast amount of money for an aircraft that still has many developmental challenges, it doesn't mean we've politicized the process. It's a little rich to pretend that somehow, because you want to use taxpayers' money in what we think is a more effective, responsible way, somehow we've politicized the procurement process.
I think there has been a significant effort on the part of some to distort and quite frankly politicize what, in my view, should be an issue of unanimous support.
I don't accept that. I don't accept that this is the only plane that Canada could get. I don't accept that it's the only choice. I don't accept that we should do that. I think that we have to go back to square one here and say, all right, the F-18s are going to run out of steam. What do we really need to replace them with?
I think the opposition parties also understand there's a real need out there, but I guess you can't really blame them for trying to play up the controversial aspects of the program for political reasons. But in the final analysis, common sense is going to prevail. The right airplane will be chosen for Canada, and that airplane, in my estimation, in the estimation of those who know the situation very well, is the F-35.
It could turn out to be the best aircraft. The way to find that out is run a competition. Get hard prices, get hard capabilities from all the contenders, and pick the one that best meets our needs. Not the US and UK's needs from the year 2000 or 2001, but our needs going into the years 2020 and onward.
If it is indeed the best aircraft for Canada, why not hold a competition?
We could go through a competition and we will come back to exactly the same answer. And I'll remind folks that, you know, we're one of 10 countries who have held a similar competition or similar analysis to replace their current fleets, and all 10 countries have come to the same conclusion. That's not a coincidence.
But a survey of newspaper headlines from JSF member countries undermines that claim. In Denmark, the political and economic costs are rising. It's the same story in the Netherlands. Reports say Norway has been under pressure by the U.S., even while its planes won't arrive on schedule. The deal has also been under intense scrutiny in Australia. Britain is expected to be scaling back its orders, and most recently, Turkey has decided to delay its decision to purchase up to 116 F-35s until December 2011. Given the delays in the development of the F-35, the uncertainty over its cost, and wavering commitments from all 9 international JSF partners, critics of the deal openly wonder what is behind the Harper government's unwavering and unflinching commitment to the F-35.
I have no doubt that the American Pentagon has put huge pressure on Canada, as it did on a number of other allies, including Israel. Some interesting information came out this week around the Israeli Air Force sort of believing that they were pushed into buying, I think, 20 F-35s.
Beware of the military-industrial complex. They have a lot of power. They have a tremendous amount of power in the United States, and I think we're seeing a lot of influence taking place in Canada, and the F-35 is probably the best example of that in recent years.
So you've got the Pentagon, the arms industry, and the Canadian military, and a government, a minority government, who needs to appease its conservative base. It's a perfect storm, And that's why they're going ahead with the F-35.
Secretary Gates has indicated that the F-35 will be the backbone of the U.S. Air Force tactical fleet for decades, and he expressed his appreciation for Canada's decision to make it ours.
So, is there a way forward that could satisfy the needs of the government, the concerns of its critics, and take some of the politics out of the procurement?
Now, I'm suggesting that you run a competition. At the end of the competition, we'll be a winner and we'll get something. If it turns out that the Joint Strike Fighter is the best one, we'll get that. If it turns out that one of the other models on the marketplace is right, we'll get that. So I don't see under any scenario where we're not going to get anything.
If you choose to use it, you have the freedom of action available to you to make an intelligent, affordable aircraft decision rather than press ahead with this rushed, expensive, performance crippling buy.
I think now Mr. Harper needs to decide that to call a stop to Joint Strike Fighter as it stands at the moment, go to a competition. It may be that Joint Strike Fighter will come out on top, but having a competition will give transparency and take the heat out of the controversy.
We shouldn't fear a competition. It's a buyer's market. Any government that goes to the open market in a competition to buy fighter jets now is going to find companies pretty willing to make commitments both on price, on cost certainty around maintenance, and on industrial and regional benefits. So we shouldn't fear that process.
I think this is one of the most important procurements that we will see in our lifetime. So having an informed, dispassionate debate and making a case, I think, is what Canadians need, not some of the rhetorical flourish and the wild accusations and some of the distorted facts about the aircraft itself.
And we couldn't agree more. Over the past hour, it has been our intention to offer some insight into this complex and controversial military procurement. After all, it is the Canadian taxpayer who foots the bill for any government purchases, and therefore who should have a say in the political priorities which will shape the future of Canada's armed forces. For CPAC, I'm Scott Taylor.